This video was sponsored by viewers like you at patreon.com/casualhistorian. Click the top link in the description to learn more. Sometimes while doing research for videos, I come across weird things that just kind of tickle my fancy. If you're a long-time viewer, you know that I have an affinity for the niche subjects of history. And if you don't know that, I like to say, hi, welcome to the channel. Consider subscribing, maybe clicking that bell icon or even following me on Twitter. If you like a taste of the kind of niche subjects I like to cover, I have a playlist you can find by clicking the eye in the upper right-hand corner. But for now, back to the video. While doing research for a completely unrelated video, I came across a conspiracy theory involving the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Now, there are several of these conspiracy theories out there. One of them is about John Wilkes Booth actually escaping capture and fleeing somewhere outside the United States. But most have to do with who may or may not have been backing Booth in his plot. It's often linked with the Confederate government, and there are some involving the British, French, and even international Jewish bankers, because of course there is. But the one that really threw me for a loop claimed that the Vatican, under the papacy of Pope Pius IX, orchestrated the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. I've been looking into this conspiracy theory for a while, and the earliest version of it I can find is from a French-Canadian ex-Catholic priest named Charles Chiniquy. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what connection does some random Canadian have with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln? Well, as it turns out, Chiniquy met Abraham Lincoln in the 1850s before Lincoln became president. In the early 1850s, Chiniquy was tasked with setting up a colony for Catholic immigrants in Illinois, mostly coming from French Canada. While serving as a leader of this community, he came into conflict with a Catholic layman, Peter Spink, whom Chiniquy accused of committing perjury in a court of law. Spink decided to sue Chiniquy for libel, and Abraham Lincoln was hired to defend the French-Canadian priest. There were a couple changes in venue to the trial, but it was eventually settled out of court in the fall of 1856. This conflict with Spink, according to Chiniquy, was sponsored by Anthony O'Regan, the Bishop of Chicago. Chiniquy claims that the French Catholics under O'Regan's diocese were mistreated, especially in comparison with Irish Catholics. Chiniquy believes that O'Regan backed Spink's libel suit as a way of silencing him, and that the bishop threatened to have Chiniquy excommunicated if he didn't leave Chicago. Chiniquy refused to leave, and in a public letter, O'Regan announced his excommunication. Chiniquy formally left the church himself in 1858, claiming that he had never been formally excommunicated by it, and spent the rest of his life trying to get French Canadians to abandon the Catholic Church, claiming that it was secretly spreading paganism. He claimed that the Catholic Church was not only responsible for the assassination of President Lincoln, but also the American Civil War.
Americans, you are sleeping on a volcano and you do not suspect it. You are pressing on your bosom a viper which will bite you to death and you do not know it. Read this book and you will see that Rome is the sworn and deadly enemy of your schools, your institutions, your so dearly bought rights and liberties, that it is to Rome you owe the rivers of blood and the unspeakable horrors of the last Civil War. But you will learn that Romism and liberty cannot live on the same ground.
Now, the assassinating Abraham Lincoln bit seems to be an original conspiracy of Chiniquy, but the idea that the Catholic Church wants to take over America is not. It would not have been too unfamiliar to your average American at the time. You see, a big part of America's cultural genetics is anti-Catholicism, and unfortunately, as that may be, at least we can say America came by it honestly, or perhaps genetically is more appropriate. America gets its anti-Catholicism from Britain, and for a long time Britain was officially anti-Catholic, and to an extent it is even so today. For in the United Kingdom, the holder of the crown cannot be a Catholic. However, this paranoia about the Catholicism comes from a real history. It starts with Henry VIII, who split off the church in England from that of Rome. However, despite the church in England being politically separated from the Pope, most of the teachings and operations of the church remained the same. After his death, though, the men who surrounded his son, Edward VI, wanted to truly transform the church in accordance with Protestant teachings. After his short reign, Edward VI was succeeded by his sister, Queen Mary I, aka Bloody Mary, who decided to restore Catholicism in a less than humane manner. After her death, we got Elizabeth I, who restored Protestantism, but made a peace with English Catholics. However, this wouldn't stop Spain from trying to reimpose Catholicism with the Spanish Armada, which was defeated mostly by the weather. Succeeding Elizabeth would be James I, under whom the gunpowder plot by Catholic terrorists such as Guy Fawkes was uncovered. James I would be succeeded by his son, Charles I, who was believed to be too sympathetic to the Catholics because of his French wife. He tried to run the government by himself without the aid of Parliament, which eventually resulted in a civil war, where he was executed and a Protestant theocracy under Oliver Cromwell was installed. After Cromwell's death, Parliament restored the monarchy with Charles I's son, James II, who was succeeded by his brother, Charles II, who was a Catholic. He would be deposed in the Glorious Revolution in 1688, at which point the monarchy would remain Protestant to this day. So given this history, it's understandable that England may have some more strong feelings about Catholicism. But it doesn't stop there. Back in 1619, we have the Puritans, who first left England for the Netherlands because they felt that the already anti-Catholic Anglican Church was still too Catholic. They then decided to settle in the Americas, where they became one of the cultural seats of the United States. This anti-Catholicism would raise its ugly head in the lead-up to the American Revolution. In 1763, a proclamation prevented British colonists from settling further into the interior of the continent. This was compounded in 1774, when Parliament passed the Quebec Act, which protected the right of French Canadians to practice Catholicism freely in Quebec, while also territorially expanding the colony. From the perspective of English colonists, they were thinking, so you're gonna let those heathen Catholics settle further into the interior, but not us? Anti-Catholicism would frequently pop up in American politics after independence. The Whig Party, the Know-Nothings, and the Anti-Masonic Party were all anti-Catholic to one degree or another. Many of the people who opposed the Mexican-American War did so because all the territory the US wanted to annex from Mexico would be populated by Catholics. In fact, this fear that Catholics may begin to outnumber Protestants in the US was something that Chiniquy played into. In his main book, 50 Years in the Church of Rome, he published what he claims to have received letters and conversations he had with American priests and bishops. One of the letters he received from James Van de Velde, the predecessor to Anthony O'Regan, outlined a strategy to take over the United States by way of immigration.
You are aware that the land of the whole valley of the Mississippi are among the richest and most fertile soil in the world. In the near future, those regions will be the granary of the whole world, and those who will possess them will become its rulers. It is our intention, without noise, to take possession of those vast and magnificent regions of the West, in the name and for the benefit of our Holy Church. Our plan to attain that object is as sure as easy. There is, every year, an increasing tide of emigration from Roman Catholic regions of Europe and Canada towards the United States. The Protestants, always divided among themselves, will never form any strong party without the help of the united vote of our Catholic people. And that party alone, which will ask and get our help by yielding to our just demands, will rule the country.
If you do some digging into 19th century anti-Catholicism, you'll find similar claims all over the place. But what about Chiniquy's claims that the Vatican was responsible for both the American Civil War and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln? A big part of these claims are based on the assumption that everyone within a religious organization, or everyone that affiliates with it, is intimately familiar with all of the laws and rules of that organization. He refers to these beliefs and teachings of the Catholic Church as antisocial laws, and claims that every Catholic is knowingly or unknowingly operating under these laws, and therefore are pursuing and furthering the Vatican's goal of world domination.
Those antisocial laws today are written on her banners with the blood of 10 millions of martyrs. It is under those bloody banners that 6,000 Roman Catholic priests, Jesuits, and bishops in the United States are marching to the conquest of this republic, backed by their 7 millions of blind and obedient slaves.
And he blames these laws for the American Civil War.
Those laws, which are still the ruling laws of Rome, were the main cause of the last rebellion of the southern states. Yes, without Romism, the last awful civil war would have been impossible. Jeff Davis would have never dared to attack the North had he not had assurance from the Pope that the Jesuits, the bishops, the priests, and the whole people of the Church of Rome, under the name and mask of democracy, would help him. These diabolical and anti-social laws of Rome caused a Roman Catholic to be the man chosen to fire the first gun at Fort Sumter against the flag of liberty on the 12th of April, 1861. Those anti-Christian and anti-social laws caused the Pope of Rome to be the only crowned prince in the whole world so depraved as to publicly shake hands with Jeff Davis and proclaim him president of a legitimate government.
Not only does he claim that the laws of the Catholic Church make people more likely to rebel against the United States, but that the Vatican put in place the Confederate soldier who was the first one to fire a shot on Fort Sumter, which sparked the Civil War, the purpose of which would be to weaken America and allow the Catholic Church to take over.
From the very beginning, she perfidiously sowed the germs of division and hatred between the two great sections of this country, and she felt an unspeakable joy when she saw that she'd succeeded in dividing the South from the North on the burning question of slavery, to crush one party by the other and reign over the bloody ruins of both.
What's weird about this, however, is Chiniquy's claim that the Pope recognized the Confederacy as a legitimate state and Jefferson Davis as its legitimate president. Both of these are objectively false. This rumor comes from a mistranslated letter received by Confederate diplomat Ambrose Dudley Mann. The letter addressed Jefferson Davis as Honorable President of the Confederate States of America, or at least that's how Mann translated it. A more accurate translation would have been President of an American Regional Federation. In either case, this was seen by both Judah P. Benjamin, the Confederate Secretary of State, and Jefferson Davis himself as merely a sign of politeness. Otherwise, the Catholic Church never recognized the Confederacy, and when meeting with the Pope, he implored the Confederates to emancipate the slaves. Plus, he also wrote letters to the bishops in America to do what they could to end the fighting, and even offered to mediate a peace between the two sides. So claiming that the Vatican wanted war or supported the Confederacy is just factually false. Okay, then what about the assassination? Why would the Pope want Lincoln dead? Well, according to Chiniquy, it's because Lincoln dared to defend him in a court of law. And since Chiniquy was an opponent of the authorities of the Catholic Church, that put Lincoln into the crosshairs of Pius IX. But certainly it must require a little more evidence than just having been a lawyer for a soon-to-be excommunicated priest, right? Why, indeed there is. When you look at Chiniquy's work, as well as the others that came out after him, there are assertions that John Wilkes Booth and most of his co-conspirators were Catholics. Well, that's kinda hard to prove, especially for Booth himself. I can't find much on the religious beliefs of John Wilkes Booth. The closest I found was his political involvement in his earlier years with the Know-Nothings, who are an American nativist party known for their anti-Catholicism. So given that, I doubt Booth was probably a Catholic. The biggest support for this part of the conspiracy comes from the Surratt family. There was Mary Surratt, whose home was used as the meeting place for the assassins, and her son, John Surratt. John was pivotal in the plot because he's the one who introduced Booth to several of the other conspirators. The Surratts were Catholic and had supported the Democratic Party due to the Republican Party's tendency for anti-Catholicism at that time. John Surratt also served as a courier and spy for the Confederate government for a time during the end of the war. This connection is one of the reasons why some people believe that the plot may have been orchestrated by the Confederate government. Upon the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, Booth and David Harold escaped into Virginia, where they were eventually killed at Garrett Farm. John Surratt, however, wasn't in town at the time of the assassination. Exactly where he was is uncertain, but when he heard about it, he fled the country, first staying in Montreal, where it is rumored that he was housed by a pair of Catholic priests, and then to Europe, where in 1866 he was spotted in Rome, having become part of the Papal Salva, the remnants of the Papal States military. He was arrested in Rome but managed to escape to Egypt, where he was spotted, captured again, and extradited to the US. However, by the time he was returned to the US, the statute of limitations on most of the crimes he participated in had passed, and 8 of the 12 men in the jury voted not guilty on the count of murder. So he was released, and he spent the rest of his life in silent obscurity, dying in 1916. Now, Chiniquy and others tried to make a big deal about their Catholicism, but it seems far more likely that their identity as Democrats and Southerners were the real motivating factors behind the assassination. The fact that John Surratt became a member of the Papal Salva army had nothing to do with any conspiracy against Lincoln. In fact, at the time it consisted mostly of foreign volunteers wanting to help Pope Pius IX resist Italian unification movement. And they would have thought very little of some random American showing up offering his services. We should also consider the fact that when he joined, the Vatican had no idea who he was, and as soon as it was discovered, they were the ones who arrested him in the first place. So there you have it, a 19th century conspiracy theory about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln involving the Vatican that is so crazy that no one today could possibly believe it. Right? Right? Right?
That's the story I've got for you. If you had the guts to cover the Vatican-Nazi alliance, then you should have what it takes to take a look at who really killed President Abraham Lincoln.
Can't unsee that.
I would like to give special thanks to JJ McCullough and Gipoli for providing some voice work for this video. And if you're a fan of this kind of video, then may I suggest, subscribing, liking, and especially sharing this video. And considering that this video is talking about a conspiracy theory, even if a very antiquated one, YouTube has been on a spree going after conspiracy theories, even things that aren't actually promoting them, but rather just talking about their mere existence. Like with my Holocaust video in the past, they don't really know how to differentiate between acknowledging the existence of a thing and endorsement of said thing. So, like I said, if you would like to support this channel in a way other than, say, Patreon, then sharing the video is one of the best ways you can do that. But while I'm here, how about I ask you guys, what are some other antiquated, obscure conspiracy theories from like the 19th century or whenever that you might like me to take a look at in a future video? So let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.